Jesus told his disciples not to pray the way the religious people around them prayed. He said it clearly. He said it specifically. And then, within a single generation, the movement built in his name adopted almost exactly the prayer practice he warned against. That is not an interpretation. That is the historical record, sitting in plain sight in the same gospel that preserved the warning. And the reason almost no one names this directly is exactly why you are watching this video. Because naming it requires holding two things at once: a genuine love for what Jesus was pointing toward, and an honest reckoning with what was done to it after he was gone. Stay with this, because what is hidden inside that warning, and inside the prayer that followed it, is one of the most precise maps of inner transformation that has ever been encoded into a few lines of spoken language. And you have almost certainly been reciting it without ever seeing it. Go back to the moment, not to the liturgy, not to the church hall, or the cathedral, or the Sunday school classroom. Go back to the actual moment described in the text, Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 13. Jesus is speaking on a hillside or in a crowded courtyard to people who already pray. These are not irreligious people. They are people for whom prayer is a daily practice, inherited, structured, communal, and he does not congratulate them on this. He says, when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. The Greek word used here is hypokrites. In the ancient Greek world, a hypokrites was not simply a liar or a fraud. The word literally referred to a stage actor, someone who wore a mask, someone performing a role for an audience. Read that again slowly. He is not saying, do not pray wrongly. He is saying, do not perform prayer. Then he names the performance precisely. They love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, to be seen by others, not to be heard by the divine, to be seen by others. And then he says something that should stop you cold, because the translation almost always smooths it over. They have received their reward in full. The Greek word for received in full is apekuschein. It is the word used on commercial receipts in the ancient world. It means the transaction is complete. The account is settled. There is nothing more coming. You prayed to be seen. You were seen. Transaction complete. That is not a metaphor. That is a forensic observation about the mechanics of intention. Then he says, when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. The word for secret in Greek is krypto, as in hidden, as in concealed from the outer world, as in the inner chamber of the self. And then immediately, directly, in the very next breath, he says, and when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Batalogesete, often translated as vain repetition in older English texts. Literally, to stammer uselessly, to heap up empty phrases, to repeat words mechanically without inner life. He warns against it. And then he teaches a prayer. Here is the part almost no one pauses to examine. What did the earliest followers do with that teaching? The Didache, one of the oldest Christian documents we possess, dated by most scholars to somewhere between 50 and 120 CE, possibly predating the final form of Matthew's Gospel, records a liturgical instruction. It says the prayer Jesus taught should be recited 3 times a day. 3 times a day. Read that again. Jesus warned against mechanical repetition. He offered a prayer as a structure of inner orientation, and within decades, possibly within his own generation, that prayer had become a scheduled daily recitation, not a doorway, a duty. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a suppression in the dramatic sense. It is something quieter, and in many ways more instructive. It is what institutions do to living teachings, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Institutions need things that can be administered. You cannot administer an inner experience. You can schedule a recitation. Something happened in the centuries after this teaching was given that needs to be named clearly, not with anger, not with blame, simply with honesty. The prayer survived. The warning about the prayer did not. The form was preserved. The life inside the form was quietly set aside. And what was set aside was extraordinary. Because if you read the prayer Jesus gave not as a script to be recited, but as a map of conscious ascension through the structure of reality, what you find is something that belongs not just to Christian history, but to the oldest esoteric tradition in the ancient world. A Gnostic map of the inner cosmos, hidden in plain sight, recited every week by hundreds of millions of people who have never been shown what they are actually holding. If what you are hearing is opening something in you right now, take a moment and subscribe to the Gnostic Archive. Every video here is another doorway into what Jesus and the ancient Gnostic tradition was actually teaching. And if this moment feels real to you, leave a comment below. Write, "I see it now," not as a slogan, as a marker, so others walking this path know they are not alone. Now we go deep. Our Father, who art in heaven. Most people hear this as a greeting, an address, the way you might begin a letter, "Dear God." But the word translated as Father from the Aramaic that Jesus almost certainly spoke is Abwun, not simply Father in the biological or patriarchal sense. Abwun comes from the root Ab, which means source, origin, that which generates. And the suffix wun suggests a dynamic, ongoing process, not a static being, an active emanation, a source that is continuously sourcing. This is the Gnostic concept of the monad, the uncontained, self-originating ground of all being, not a person sitting on a throne, but the living origin point from which all of reality flows. Who art in heaven, in Aramaic, Dibwa Shmaya. Shmaya does not simply mean sky or a physical location above the clouds. It means the realm of vibration, of name, of essence, the level of reality where things exist as pure pattern before they descend into form. The pleroma, the fullness, the level of the divine above the visible world. So the prayer does not open with a greeting to a distant deity. It opens with an act of recognition. I am addressing the living source of my being, not in the sky above me, but at the level of pure essence that underlies all form. That is a radically different posture of prayer. One is petition, the other is alignment. Hallowed be thy name. In Aramaic, Nethkadash Shmak. Nethkadash, often translated as hallowed or sanctified, carries the deeper meaning of being set apart, made distinct, made clear. But notice, this is not a statement about God's name being holy. It is a request, a movement, an orientation. Let your name, your essential nature, your vibrational signature be made clear, be brought into focus, be revealed. In Gnostic understanding, the divine name is not a word, it is a reality. The name of the monad is the monad itself, its self-disclosure, its radiation into the world. To hallow the name is to become transparent to that radiation, to stop being opaque, to let the divine light through. This is not praise for God's benefit. This is an act of inner opening for the sake of the one praying. The first movement of the prayer is not worship. It is an act of inner alignment with the deepest level of reality. Thy kingdom come. Tithi Malkuthak. Malkuthak, kingdom, in Aramaic and in Hebrew, carries the sense of a ruling principle, a governing reality, a sovereign order, not a geographic territory, not a future political state. A living order that exists at a level of reality that has not yet fully penetrated the visible world. Thy kingdom come is not a prayer for a future event. It is a prayer for descent, for the higher order to become present and operative in this realm, for the pleroma to break through the kenoma, the emptiness, the deficiency that characterizes the world we currently inhabit. In Gnostic cosmology, the visible world was not created by the highest divine. It was fashioned by a lower power, a demiurgic force that constructed a realm of limitation, of separation, of forgetting, and the trajectory of the conscious soul is to remember its origin, to realign with the higher order, to invite the true kingdom, the sovereignty of the divine light, to become operative here. Now, in this breath, in this moment, thy kingdom come is not a passive wish, it is an act of conscious invitation from within. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Nehwe tsevyanach aikanna debwashmaya afbiarcha. The word translated as will is tsevyan. It does not mean command or decree or external law. It means desire, love-longing, the deep motion of the heart toward what it loves. The will of the divine is not a rule book. It is a love movement, an irresistible inclination of the source toward its own fullness. As in heaven, so on earth, the request is for coherence between the higher realm of pure pattern and the lower realm of manifest form. For the pneuma, the divine spark within you, to express itself fully and freely in the body, in the world, in the relationships and choices that constitute your daily life. Heaven is not far away. Heaven is the level of reality where your truest nature already exists in its fullness. And the prayer is not asking God to intervene from outside. It is a movement of the soul toward coherence between its highest truth and its embodied expression. Most people who say this every week have never been shown that. Give us this day our daily bread. Hablan lachma dasun kanan ya omana. Lachma, bread, in Aramaic has a broader meaning than physical food. It comes from a root meaning, understanding, wisdom, insight, the nourishment that sustains the inner life. Dos, unkanan, our need, our essential requirement. Yaomana, of this day, of this moment, not a stockpile, not a guarantee of future provision. The insight, the understanding, the inner light needed for this day. This is not a request for material prosperity. It is a recognition that the soul requires daily nourishment from the divine level, that without ongoing contact with the source, the pneumatic spark dims, the awareness contracts, the archonic patterns of fear and compulsion reassert themselves. The prayer is asking for what the mystics called grace, not as a theological concept, but as a living daily infusion of the higher light into the lower vessel. Most people who say this every week have never been shown that. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Washboklan kaubain ikanna dafknan shpokan lakayabain. The word translated as trespasses, kaubain, is more precisely rendered as our debts, our entanglements, our unresolved weights, not sins in the legal sense, not violations of a moral code for which punishment is owed. The image is of something that binds, something that keeps the soul tethered to a lower level of experience than it could inhabit. And the structure of the sentence is precise. Forgive our entanglements in the same measure as we release others from theirs. This is not a transactional bargain with a divine accountant. It is a recognition that the soul that clings to grievance creates its own gravity, holds itself at the level of the wound, cannot rise, and the soul that releases, genuinely releases, not performatively, but through the real internal act of letting the other person's debt go, that soul unbinds itself at the same moment. This is the Gnostic understanding of gnosis as liberation, not from sin, but from the weights that keep the divine spark from its natural upward movement. To forgive, in this frame, is not a moral virtue. It is a cosmological act, a loosening of the chains of the kenoma, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Wela tahlan lensuna ela patsan min bisha. Nesuna, often rendered temptation, more accurately means testing, trial, the experience of being pulled below one's true nature. Bisha, evil in most translations, but the word carries the meaning of immaturity, of unripeness, of the state of fragmentation and separation that characterizes unredeemed existence. The prayer is not asking to be protected from moral failure. It is asking to be kept aligned with the divine light, to not be pulled down into the gravitational field of the lower nature, the realm of the archons, the patterns of fear, compulsion, and forgetting that constitute what the Gnostics called the kinoma. Lead us not into the testing of fragmentation. Deliver us from the world of separation. And then in the oldest manuscripts, the ending is simply silence. No doxology. No, for thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory. That conclusion was added later, probably by liturgical practice, by communities that needed a formal close. The original prayer ends mid-breath, in a request, in an open longing, not in conclusion, in ongoing movement toward the light. Most people who say this every week have never been shown that. Most people would have clicked away long before now. But you stayed, and that tells me something. Subscribe to the Gnostic Archive if you want to keep walking deeper. Share this with one person who is ready, because this kind of recovery, this reclamation of what was quietly set aside, does not happen alone. It happens in community, in the slow, patient work of people who refuse to accept the surface when they can feel there is something beneath it. Now turn the mirror toward yourself. How many times have you said this prayer? 50 times, 100, 1,000. Sitting in a pew, responding on cue, lips moving, mind elsewhere. Or perhaps fully present in the words, but present to the words as script, as recitation, as performance for an invisible audience. Be honest with yourself for a moment. This is not condemnation. This is recognition. Jesus named the two versions of prayer with surgical precision. The prayer that is a performance directed at an audience, horizontal in its energy, seeking validation in the social space. And the prayer that is an inner event, directed inward and upward, vertical in its movement, seeking contact with the living source. The hollow version looks like prayer. It has all the right words. It observes all the right forms. It can move you to tears if the choir is good enough. But it is theater, not because the people practicing it are frauds, but because the attention is positioned outward toward what others see, toward the accumulated weight of tradition, toward the comfort of the familiar script. The living version looks almost nothing like what most people have been shown. It is quiet. It is interior. It is an act of precise inner orientation, movement by movement, word by word, in which the soul positions itself in relation to the structure of reality. It is less performance and more navigation, less petition and more alignment. And the extraordinary thing is this: the words themselves are not the obstacle. The prayer itself is a map of staggering precision. The obstacle is the posture. The obstacle is what you believe you are doing when you say them. If you believe you are reciting a sacred formula that pleases an external deity, you are, in Jesus' own words, an actor. The transaction will be complete the moment anyone sees you do it. If you understand you are moving through a 7-stage act of inner alignment, orienting to the source, opening to the higher light, inviting coherence between your deepest nature and your lived existence, releasing what binds you, and asking to be kept close to the level of reality where the divine spark can fully breathe, then the prayer is not a duty. It is a practice, not a performance, a technology. And it was given precisely, deliberately by someone who understood the difference. You were drawn to this video for a reason. Not because you are looking for controversy. Not because you want to tear something down. You are here because something in you already knows that the surface is not enough. Something in you already knows that the forms you inherited, however beautiful, however ancient, have been carrying a life inside them that was never fully transmitted. And that life is not locked in the past. It is not buried under centuries of institutional sediment, inaccessible to you. It is available, right now. In the same breath you have been using to say these words your whole life, if you know what you are actually saying. The Gnostic Archive exists for exactly this, not to dismantle what you love, but to show you what is alive inside it. Every video here is another movement of this recovery, another layer of what was quietly moved to the margins, brought back into the center, not as doctrine, but as living practice. If you are not already subscribed, this is the moment, not because we need the number, but because you deserve to be in a community that treats you as capable of this depth. Check the description and the pinned comment below. There is a way to go further with this work if you are ready. The door is open. But here is the question I want to leave you with. If the prayer you have been saying your whole life was actually a map of inner ascension, a step-by-step alignment of the human soul with its divine origin, what would it mean that you have been holding it all along? Not that it was hidden from you, that it was waiting for you. What do you do with a map once you finally know what it is? Finally know what it is.